So welcome to those attendees that are on hold. We're waiting for more people to sign up. We'll probably start somewhere between 10:03 and 10:05. So we just have the speakers on right now, just chatting and preparing for our webinar. I'm Kevin Carroll. I'm the Executive Director of Tech San Diego. We have our speakers on. All technology is ready to go, I take it. Lori, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Patty? Patty, can we hear, do you have is your audio on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how about you, Eric?
Check here.
So it sounds like everyone's ready to go. We're taping from San Diego, where it seems to be very hot lately. It seems like hopefully it's cooling down today. I'm in Rancho Penasquitos, and we don't have air conditioning since we normally get a breeze, but that's been a mistake the past couple of weeks. I'm not sure about you guys.
Well, I live in Poway, so we do have air conditioning, but it's been in the hundreds. So
Here, yeah, same here. It's really super hot, but I enjoy the heat from Hawaii, so no complaints here.
There you go. I've been looking forward to today's presentation. There's just so much to unpack. And I'm glad we're trying to get it all into one webinar. It's going to be interesting if we could make sure to get all of the kind of the factors around remote. There's just so many niches and things that people are dealing with.
Definitely. And I did a survey, a personal survey. I surveyed different employees and employers out there, and these three topics today seem to be the biggest pain points for those individuals. So great way to put it all together and present it today. So thank you, Kevin, and Tech San Diego.
Thank you. It's been interesting to see the progression. First when everyone, gee, then it seems like 20 years ago, right? Back in March, I guess, when we shut down for that initial 2 weeks and people started working remote, we were just shocked we could do it, right? And so everyone was pretty happy about things didn't collapse. And then as time goes on, these small issues just keep on bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. So we've been trying to address those through a series of webinars, this being one of them, of course.
Nice.
One of the things I did early is I invested in a very high-end headset. So I ended up buying a Jabra Evolve 65, which is nice because it simultaneously hooks up to my phone and my PC at the same time. And depending on what's working, I just pressed a button. But it's wireless, and I've been all the way down the hall on a webinar, audio webinar, and people can hear it. So it's worked out really nice. It seemed to be a good investment.
I think wireless is the way to go. Sometimes I forget I'm connected. I drag my laptop with me sometimes when I get up. So yeah, great idea.
yeah, that's great.
Those of you who are joining, we're just waiting to get some more registrants on. Thank you for being here. We should be starting in just a couple of minutes. So we're just chatting all things pandemic and work related while we start. I have a daughter who's college, and she's been doing all her work remote, and I think a lot of students actually like working remote.
Yeah, I think so too. One thing I find with students that I'm not probably addressing just for time frame, but I will address it at the end, is students seem to be sitting on their bed or on a couch, which I will address slightly. That probably one of the worst things you can do for ergonomics and posture. So, but yes.
Yeah, I was talking to my daughter this morning, and she was laying down on her bed with the laptop, pounding away.
Oh, no.
Yep. Yep. That's the only thing about having kids do that is their posture starts out bad and then it stays there all day, and not a great thing to do in an early age. So
we're going to start the webinar in just a couple of minutes here. We're just waiting for everyone to get on and sign on. You'll notice there's a question feature on your dashboard. We'll be monitoring those questions. If we deem it necessary to interrupt, we will. If not, when we get to the end, I'll start asking these questions. But feel free to submit your questions whenever you like. I have that as 10:02 on our control panel. So probably around 10:05, we're officially going to get started. So for those of you that are in listen only mode, we just have a couple of minutes here and we'll get going. I had someone ask me about my backdrop. I know with Zoom, you could create backdrops. In my home, my spouse grabbed the home office very early and confiscated it. So I was relegated to another room. So my background is actually just a backdrop from a photo thing. So we don't see how messy my house is, but it has worked out nice. You know, some of the Zoom ones, some of the backgrounds, and they get really weird around the head and everything, and it gets kind of annoying sometimes. I haven't, you know, and Microsoft Teams has that function too, and I tried it, but I think it's more annoying than pleasant to look at.
Agreed. I've seen those, definitely.
Not ready for prime time.
Yeah. And it's funny because my daughter, who's in college, she has her Zoom and she saw mine, and I think she tried to order one too that has a backdrop. So we'll see what happens. 10:03 on my control panel. So just 2 more minutes, and we're gonna officially get going. Those of you who are jumping on and listening to us, we're gonna get going in just a few minutes. See, Lori tries to adjust the lighting. Lighting's important as well.
Yeah.
I have a mini dachshund that's in my room, and thankfully it's a quiet mini dachshund, so hopefully it'll stay that way.
I put my dog outside with the bone because he's only a year old and he would be going crazy probably.
Problem is when they want to get back in the room.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You'll hear them scratching. I have my kitten and she's quiet, so she's giving me some moral support.
Yeah, cats are a lot easier to control on video calls. So let's go ahead and get going, and some folks will be jumping on late, and we shouldn't penalize everyone for that. So my name's Kevin Carroll. I'm Executive Director of Tech San Diego. This is the one in a series of webinars that we've been doing that's focusing on pandemic-related products. And as we started doing this, I really wanted to combine, we talked about this earlier, about how do we kind of combine everything into one webinar. And so we were pretty aggressive on that. And I think we have a really good agenda and a good series of speakers to talk about these layered issues of working remotely and how we handle that, from ergonomics and social and productivity. So we're going to touch upon everything. Now, part of this is just going to be stuff you already know, but you really need to be reminded of. So there's going to be a little bit of that, but I do hope there's some new things in here as well that you can take back to the office and use. So the way we're going to do that is I'm going to introduce the first speaker, and then the first speaker is going to go ahead and introduce the rest of them as we go along. And so I'm going to introduce Eric Simon first. Eric, give us a wave so we know who you are. Eric Simon has built a reputation as a passionate technology solutions evangelist and promoter. His expertise as a customer-centric leader with a 29-year record of achievement across all aspects of technology and operations in diverse industries and business environments has ensured organizations achieve maximum value for their information technology investments. And it just means that Eric's a really smart guy in helping companies leverage their technology and make sure they're doing what they need to be doing. Eric, your light's a little off. Do you have a shade coming in or something?
Yeah, looks like I got the shade coming in.
Well, it's nice to see it's sunshine over there. I am going to turn it over to you, and you can start sharing your screen, and we'll go forward with you.
Great. If I could get the sharing. you can see my screen, can you? Good.
We can.
Excellent. All right. Welcome and good morning. I am taking on the part of the discussion that is productivity in a remote work environment, and it's going to go around there is a fair amount of discussion about back in March when everything changed, and we had basically, for many of us in organizations, we had a weekend to kind of flip the switch to say, we're moving from working in the office and seeing everybody on a Monday, hearing about the weekend, and then working there through Friday and telling everybody about the weekend that's coming up, to we're all going to be talking remotely, we're all going to be working remotely, and most notably, we're going to be accessing services remotely, whether it be work, and I'm going to be inclusive of the fact that we are dealing with education as well, and the schooling, working from home, and getting it so that our children have the access without hindering our need to be able to perform with our efforts from home at work as they expect us to be, our fellow coworkers. When we think about the connectivity between the offices, we're always dealing with a source and a destination. In the web, we're talking about a source being ourselves, our local device that we're connecting from, and the destinations, which could be a single location, multiple locations, the internet, which may be many locations of the web. What we'll call endpoint 1 and endpoint 2. So what I broke this out to be is to explain some of the best practices specifically around those communication between the source and the destinations that we have control over in a professional environment and in a school environment. That means going from the effort of the office with all the services that may be it, or in the cloud, such as Azure or Office 365 and AWS, to our destination, which would be the device that we may be on. So in this case, as you can see, I've kind of flipped it in the sense that we're going to talk about the device endpoint last. But that being said, that really is, if we're sitting in front of it, us being the person in front of it, that's our source. The office network, as you can see in the left-hand visual, as well as equivalent to the cloud, as well as the World Wide Web, and any other remote-based services is your destination. With that, we're going to discuss the office managed networks, the cloud services, necessary items such as encrypted communications. In this day and age, it's critical. Relying on reliable broadband. And then discussing how we start moving into how do we get the home Wi-Fi's or the residential or the mobile Wi-Fi's separated so that we're not getting hindered in our work effort or our education effort when we are utilizing it. When we talk about the endpoint, when we talk about the computer, the device, the phone, anything that's around us that we're on, we're going to talk about the device operating system, what it takes to ensure that we have a reliable location, a reliable service that we're working with. Again, talking about the other side of encrypted communications. And then doing the separation of the recreational devices versus the work devices, so we don't see a hindrance in performance when our fellow company members are relying on us to provide a service or provide a presentation, but it's crawling because little 14-year-old Joe is playing Call of Duty down the hallway. And then ensure devices are up to date and running security monitors. So with that in mind, let's talk about that endpoint, that destination first. What are we communicating to? Whether it be, again, the office, the school's data center, another private data center, a cloud service such as AWS, Office 365, Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle services, or for that matter, even going to other services such as streaming services. So with those items, and we look at that, all the data assets and services that are in an office infrastructure, which is probably for an organization, it's proprietary assets that we need to make sure are secure. And to do that, we need to ensure that we have security around the edge and security around the whole ecosystem that protects what our organization is about and what our organization has as proprietary material. The standard 101 item that must be done is by protecting the edge, much like putting a security system around your house or a security system around your property to ensure that there's no unwanted access from the public side of the world. This means that whether we are in the cloud, whether we are in our office, in a private colo data center, we must have that network that consists of all that internally that's secured by firewalls and secured so that this way only information that a user should explicitly have should be accessible through it. That's what we call explicit credentials and explicit access, not implicit access. Implicit access means, we'll assume that we'll give them enough rope to shine or hang himself. Whereas explicit is, we will explicitly say that you are allowed this access, but no more. So we limit that access at these firewalls from remote locations, ideally through virtual private networks, what we know as VPNs affectionately. And that must be and should be maintained with a centralized database that has all the users' information in it. So that this way we have one location to manage the users and their connectivity available to all users around them. So that this way they only can have that one place to maintain. So if a user is let go, or if a user needs to have access changes made, it can be done in one location. And this firewall with VPN access utilizes that. That's typically what you'll see is things like, let's say Cisco or Palo Alto or one of these may have access to the Active Directory because your company uses a Windows environment. Then we need to ensure though that everything has antivirus and anti-malware protection, and that we are ensuring that no one can have unauthorized access to these locations with that may not be as protected. Because right now, our biggest threat to every organization is the fact that malware can get in through the increased extensions of our network, because everybody's gone remotely to all different corners of the world. And that means our company network has now been extended. And I'll go through that when we get to that point there. But that means then that we've got to be ultra diligent. And in every organization I've been at, one mantra that I put to the entire organization is that security is everyone's responsibility in the organization. And it cannot be back of mind, rear of mind, a secondary thought. It must be actively pursued, in the sense that every user must be cognizant about what they're clicking on, the locations that they're going to, who they're sharing with or what they're sharing with, and when they are accessing other services, what they're doing with it, so that as to not inadvertently open up potential holes for malintended purposes. we in the United States, so we have a 3-hour time difference between the West Coast and East Coast. We take Hawaii, we got a 6-hour time difference between East and West. The fact is that means that we're typically dealing with an 18-hour day. Well, guess what? That may be the case, but all the folks out there that are, whether it be state actors like Russia, like the Russians, the North Koreans, the Iranians, and other bad actors that are trying to sabotage organizations, sabotage schools, or anything of the sort, they're working 24/7. So we must be diligent, and it takes every single employee in the organization to actively know that they are doing their best, thinking about actively they're not clicking on the wrong items or providing information to unauthorized sources. So with that, one of the great ways of ensuring that we minimize that potential of being inadvertently hacked or inadvertently accessed inappropriately is through anti-malware and antivirus protection throughout the company network. Now, again, we talk about the company network or the school network. Currently, before March, that typically consisted of just your private footprint. But come COVID, guess what happens? Now, all of a sudden, everybody's got to move off to their homes or to their remote locations, preferably a beach somewhere with a hotspot so that they can go and have a great time, sit on the beach and enjoy themselves. They are the ones that are, those people now are now part of your network if they connected in to those services. And that is where we now need to be concerned about ensuring that we are extending our network. There's a new concept in the firewall / endpoint protection world called SASE. And it's really talking about servicing the entire extended network throughout your footprint of your organization or your school. If I'm a student and I'm logging into the cloud service specific to my school, I am now extending that network into my house or into wherever I may be, preferably again at the beach. And with that, one of the items that's definitely important was that we get to ensuring that everybody has proper authentication. The authentication means that every person should be uniquely identified. When they're uniquely identified, that then allows them to ensure that we know who is doing what when it comes through the network, and that every point where we connect, we know where that person has been or that user has been, to ensure that we don't have, that we need to track and trace should there be a challenge of someone getting hacked or inappropriately accessed. Going back to the item about restrictive, we must, all systems for proper security through the extended network now, knowing that we're now going all the way to people's homes and people's beaches, we now must ensure that we are restrictive, most restrictive for the users. So their users should not be set up with, here's open access, go have at it. And please don't look at stuff that you shouldn't have access to. It is instead, this is what you have access to. If you need additional access, there should be a governance policy in place that says, apply for this access, because as a public company, if you are a public company, for example, or even a health organization with HIPAA rules, you are going to need to prove access to locations of data that may be proprietary and may not be necessarily available to everyone. One of the last items on setting up these remote locations and setting up these VPN endpoints that allows you to extend the network outwards, ensure you set idle timeouts. You don't want your user at the beach sitting there working away, decides, oh, look, there's a great swell coming in, I'm gonna jump on my board, go run in the surf, and your laptop's sitting there open for, let's say, 30 minutes because it was a great set of sets. Well, guess what? Somebody could have walked by and started working your laptop. idle timeouts ensure that in case you do not forget, in case you do not remember to lock your station down, it'll lock you out automatically. That's what idle timeout is critical about. And that is what should be a factor for all services that we provide to our extended network, which is now inclusive of not just our offices and our private services and our public services that represent our company, but also now to the endpoints, wherever they may be at. Now, let's talk about the source. Source is being, all right, so we're at home, like I'm sitting here at home, or we're at the beach, preferably, would be the nicer way of doing things. In a home enablement, in a home environment, one of the things that is critical as we started moving, especially as we started moving to COVID back in March, the organization I was at the time, the fact was that one of the things we did do was we had to flip 1,300 folks, as an example, from working day in, day out in the office to extending all the way through to the to their homes, and enabling them to continue to perform the same functions that they performed earlier somewhere else instead of in the office. The critical piece of that is connectivity. Now, most of us, we're here in San Diego, most of us have typically either our, what we call our MSO, which is our cable provider, whether it be Cox or Spectrum, or we have AT&T or some third party, or potentially Metro Wi-Fi, or even in some cases, we have, let's say, the MiFi device, a mobile Wi-Fi router that allows us to be mobile wherever we go, but connected to the internet through cellular service. Whatever it may be, we need to be able to trust that connectivity for us to be able to have reliable service for us working remotely or going to school remotely. To do that, there are some things once we've got that in place. And again, you're talking about cable modem, you're talking about, well, DSL is with AT&T has now been, they're going to stop taking orders, and now they're only going to do fiber connections or satellite connections going forward. And then you also have mobile broadband type connectivities as well. In those scenarios, once you have that in place and you can rely on that connectivity, then you got to start looking at how can I optimize that home environment so that this way I am not being hampered by my Biff and Bob that are my 12 and 13-year-olds that are sitting there playing Call of Duty all day when they're supposed to be doing their algebra work. And instead, they are now going ahead and playing Call of Duty. So with that in mind, that's what they are going to be doing. They will be performing that function of being off there to the side. We must, at best, separate their network from our network. Most Wi-Fi routers and routers these days allow for separate networks. And that's the way that you can help yourself when you're working from home or remote. Ensure that whatever devices are not doing work, stay on the side and focus on doing recreational items separate from the network that you're doing your work with, so that you have a better access to the internet pipeline. Also, when you're working in the office, when you're working on your remote connections, it's best to minimize other users' devices that are attached to the network while working. That way you have more bandwidth to yourself. Bandwidth is a fixed quantity. So it's a net zero sum game. If somebody else is not using, you can be using it. One tip and note, if video conferencing is being utilized, you should disconnect from the Office VPN if it is not required to connect. The point about that is that this way you'll have a better quality of your video conferencing if that is the case, and you're allowed to work your video conferencing without going through the office. Then the other part that is critical, again, goes back to everybody needs to be responsible for security. Ensure that your work device, whether it be one that the office provided, the company, the school provided you, or one that you provided at home that's your personal, you should be meeting minimum security and operating system requirements, ensuring that you have antivirus, anti-malware on there to ensure that you are protected from those bad actors that are trying to get in and break into your systems, because you have now
Eric,
just opened up your network.
Eric, if it's okay, I'm gonna take the organizer's prerogative to ask a question on the Wi-Fi. So most of us, as we, our Wi-Fi network was adequate for what we were doing. It's obviously being stretched, as you outlined, for work. Are there strategies? Should we ditch the operator equipment and buy higher end equipment? Should we be looking at a mesh network? How do we look at maximizing? For instance, right before you answer, like I tried to increase my broadband, so I called and I'm paying 20, 30 more bucks a month to increase my broadband, and I don't see any difference at all. And so I'm just wondering if there's strategies to increase the bandwidth with what you already have. I'll go off mute. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's a very fair question, because number one, there are user personality things that you can do, such as minimizing the user access. Two, you can minimize what services are operating at once. Taking note that streaming services are notorious hogs. So if you've got family members that are running Netflix and running Call of Duty or one of the web games at the same time that you are trying to get work done, you are going to be restricted. Now, from a standpoint of, let's take like Spectrum, you may have gone to the next level up. The fact is that you are on a broadband connection. The broadband connection does mean that you are in a shared environment. So there are some physical limitations to how much bandwidth is allocated to you and how much upstream from you that you have as a pipe. Think of it as I-805 and I-5 coming together. You have 4 lanes and 4 lanes kind of coming together. It makes 8 lanes. That should mean that it should coincide that they can continue to run smoothly. Yet, if let's say we've got all these other on-ramps that we start adding into that on-ramp, into that merge, the fact is that now all of a sudden you've got a whole bunch more people, a whole bunch more access cars coming in and slowing you down because they're coming on board, and they're slowing you down because now you're stuck behind them. So broadband, whether it be Spectrum, Cox, you are sharing with your fellow neighbors the same connectivity of the same fixed pipe. So you are limited in that sense. But within the house, the typical items that you can do to optimize is one, the general level is separate the gaming and recreational from the work on the networks by separating those networks. Two, minimizing the recreational during your work efforts in order to ensure that you have the maximum amount of bandwidth that's available at that point where you go into the cloud, into the internet by your device. Three, there's also, and this gets a little bit into the technical side of things, but you can set up what's called quality of service on many of the devices. So if you buy additional, like what you mentioned, can I get, let's say, a newer Cisco router or a newer Netgear device that has higher bandwidth or has newer Wi-Fi technology? That helps you locally in your office with a higher, faster Wi-Fi. Like let's say Wi-Fi 6 is now there, and you buy a Wi-Fi 6 router. That means you're getting to your cable modem much faster than you were with your 802.11b or G or AN, but you're still limited. The bottleneck is still what goes out from your cable modem into the internet. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. And the last item I want to bring up again, this goes back to another best practices, which is enabling idle timeout. I have had the misfortune of my cat coming in and writing emails by accident by stepping on the keyboard because he likes the sound of the keys, and that going out and doing unwanted damage to things that I thought I did not say. So idle timeout can be as simple and innocent as the pet coming in and having fun with your laptop, or as nefarious as you being in a coffee shop on your Wi-Fi mobile router, and somebody walking by and seeing what is on your laptop because you ran off to the bathroom for a couple minutes to go pick up your coffee or put more milk in the thing. So that's the last item that I really wanted to bring up to say of how do we get it so that we can best utilize what we've got as we extend our network to our home and to that endpoint now being the source remotely. For that, I want to thank you. And with that, I want to introduce Patty Bustamante. Patty is the owner of HR Extension. She is an HR consultant and a career and life coach with over 15 years of employee experience management. She is also the VP of Client Solutions and Business Development at Advanced Home Offices that provides solutions for organizations with a remote workforce to increase their productivity while reducing risk. Please let me know if you have any questions and have a wonderful day. And thank you so much. Patty, all you.
Thank you, Eric. So let me share my screen here. All right. All right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric. So I guess piggybacking on that connectivity piece
Patty,
of
can
it,
you go back on video like Eric did so we could see you while you're doing the presentation?
I'm actually having issues with my video, so I
That's
thought
fine.
I'd
Okay,
just
go ahead.
shut it off so that we don't distract the audience. So
That's fine. Go ahead.
maybe I need Eric's assistance to make sure I have good bandwidth in the future. But so my presentation is about social connectivity. So why is social connectivity important for remote workforce? One of the core components of building trust is creating relationships. Socializing at work isn't merely a tactic to keep employees engaged. It is a major part of a highly functioning team. So if your remote team is going to trust each other, they'll need that time to spend relationally together. So in the next 15 minutes, I'd like to share some ideas to help you and your team successfully build and maintain those team relationships to ensure you have a highly functional team. All right. So the first thing I'd like to focus on is virtual remote new hire onboarding. Hiring and onboarding new employees completely virtually is definitely a new concept for most employers. A lot of companies are trying to figure this out still until this day. Getting it right is more important now more than ever. With with workers starting new jobs from home against a backdrop of COVID-19 without having physically met anyone during the recruitment and hiring process. Many managers and companies, as many of us know, have typically winged the onboarding process, doing it on the fly. But with everything virtual, more structure is definitely needed. Therefore, it's much more important now that employers strive to make virtual onboarding seamless, dynamic, informative, and most importantly, engaging. So there are 5 major areas to focus on when onboarding your remote new hire. Begin with the process as early as possible, even up to 3 weeks if possible. Set them up on their team Slack groups or any communication platform the company has implemented. And if you haven't done so, please highly consider it. Having the right tech stack and systems in place will help employees navigate through our new normal and successfully do their job. Begin by integrating them into the company culture and identifying with team members. And you can do so with a list of social activities scheduled for them. You can send it to them, put them on their calendar, send a set of photos of their team members, and even better, send pre-recorded videos of each of their team members, sharing a short message about themselves, what their first week was like, and what they love about the company. You can send them a list of projects as well that they'll be working with and photos of the individuals who will be working with them. Send a pre-recorded video from their hiring manager doing a quick welcome and a quick summary of what to expect on their first day and first week. And even better, a welcome video from the CEO and a nice care package waiting at their door. These are basically teasers to get them excited about their first day, about their new job, their new company, their new family. This will help begin their immersion into their new team before the first day. Next thing here is to get employees online as soon as possible. On their first day, have IT be their first training session, and don't push this to a later time. Of course, have their first virtual company connection be with their hiring manager, welcoming them with virtual open arms and virtual handshakes, but do not delay the IT training. Having access to their digital workplace is an extremely important part of a remote new hire experience. Understanding the tools they need to do their jobs and how to access the resources they need to be successful in what they do is very key to an employee's experience and first impression during this important part of their employee journey. This will allow them to feel like they are able to reach out digitally and understand how, and they will have a ton of questions as a new hire and wanting and needing to know how to connect to the company, and each team member is very important in their training and in their immersion process. Next here is to create a new hire orientation schedule. So this helps the new hire know what to expect, and make sure to add the events on their schedule onto their online calendar. Providing them with a digital handout as well as adding the calendar ensures the new hire will be able to find the information easily. You do not want your new hire to be wondering what's next, waiting for that call, waiting for a message from someone to reach out to them while they're sitting patiently in front of their computer and twiddling their thumbs. You want them to be able to prepare mentally and to be able to prepare their home world so that they can really be present and focus on the virtual immersion. Ensure all participants that are part of the new hires training be prepared. So help participants understand their role and the information they will be sharing. Send them calendar invites so they don't miss their sessions. Set up those video conferencing details ahead of time, and if you have to, do test runs with the participants, especially with those who are new to the onboarding process. Allow one-on-one sessions with their manager for check-ins. So this is an important opportunity for the manager to have time with their new hires to get a pulse of their progress and to address any issues that they may be experiencing sooner than later. Allow for breathing space as well, going back to the bullet prior to that. Biggest complaints that I've heard from new hires is that they're just having so many back-to-back training sessions. It does not give them time to breathe, does not give them the opportunity to absorb the information. It becomes exhausting and no longer a fun process for them. And because people connectivity is important, give them that time to also be able to make those connections in between those training sessions. Allow for virtual group events with team members and other employees of the company. So turn those new hire lunches and happy hours virtual. And I believe a lot of companies have already started doing so. But make sure you pre-order food packages if you are able to be delivered to the participants. Make sure that the events are on the participants' calendars. Plan everything in advance, including the activities, the introduction format. Consider inserting an individual who is naturally social to ensure an engaging event, and focus on the goal of immersing the new hire into their new team, new role in company. Create a sense of belonging. This is my fourth item here. Encourage team members to engage with the new hire on Slack or whatever company messaging tool that you have. Consider assigning team members a time slot to do this and create that structure and organization to keep things moving smoothly and seamlessly. Assign the new hire mentor or an orientation buddy. By doing this, the new hire has to go-to person for any questions he or she may have, but make sure you select someone who has a good grasp of the culture, the role of the new hire, and how things work in the company. And make sure that this person is also resourceful, because this individual may not have all the answers, but they'll be able to find the individual or individuals to be able to answer the new hire's questions. And finally, encourage collaboration immediately. Put the new hire on projects that will allow them to work with other team members during their first week and second week. Identify a simple project that will allow a new hire to experience remote collaboration, how the team works together virtually, what systems they're utilizing, how things are organized, and who the players are. So some project examples include a case study or taking an existing issue in which you would place a new hire to come up with into a team that would come up with a solution. So by doing this, the current employees will have the opportunity to also connect with a new team member and get to know him or her and how they work together. This activity will help the new hire as well start building those key relationships to help him or her successfully acclimate into their new role. This idea creates opportunities as well for the new hire to connect with team members throughout the whole organization. You can do so by having the new hire sit in on other department meetings, having them join in on other teams, team lunches, and bringing them into random meetings to discuss existing issues. This type of opportunity allows the new hire to learn about the company, learn about the product or services that the company is providing, and learn about the customers that the company, the target market of the organization. So there are a lot of other ideas that will help a new hire immerse, acclimate quicker, and feel a sense of belonging, which is very important in employee retention, as you know. The number one thing to remember is that you're building a foundation for the new hire to have new relationships in the workplace and help them to have a voice, which is even more important when they are remote. All right, so bringing the fun to their home. So we already understand the importance of remote socializing. Every team relies on meaningful interaction. It helps strengthen relationships, builds that trust, and supports personal well-being. So you want all your employees to be more than just coworkers. You want everyone to be supportive of one another and to really focus on helping each other successfully get through these uncertain times and be successful in their roles. According to a recent survey that I actually stumbled on the other day, the top 3 areas that remote employees struggle with are unplugging after work, loneliness, collaborating, and communication. So as a manager, you must make it a top priority for your remote teams to engage in regular team socializing. So how do you socialize remote working? You do this through strategically designed team building activities with the goal of creating communication while reinforcing shared team identity. So here are some ideas I gathered through a lot of my interactions with different organizations in the last 8 months, and also through my own personal experience, even before COVID. So the first thing here is team lunch virtual happy hour. Gather everyone on a Zoom or a Slack call for a group or group meal or conversation. And the one key thing here is utilize creative icebreaker questions. So enough of the boring questions like, how was your weekend? Do you have any hobbies? You want to pick questions that allow the participants to engage. Some examples are, what was your first job? So this type of question prompts interesting responses that stand out. Employees find it hilarious sometimes when they find out that their boss used to be a garbage collector. So, and I'm not putting down garbage collectors. They do their jobs, love them, they take care of business, but just really get people to learn about each other. Have you met anyone famous? Another question, great ice-breaking question there. And another one that I actually love is, what was your favorite band 10 years ago? So this elicits a giggle or two. It brings coworkers together when they share an embarrassing favorite artist and band from the past. So consider sponsoring the meals as well by sending each of the team members a Grubhub or Uber Eats e-card in advance. This type of thing is also a great way to recognize employees' milestones and birthdays. And a nice touch would be to send a cupcake with a candle. This is a great platform to connect and make people feel special and close to their distant coworkers. Another idea is group virtual digital games. Schedule these as lunch get-togethers or end of the week team event or a time for a break session to get the team together and socialize. Some ideas of digital games are Words with Friends. It's an online Scrabble game. Drawize, it's another online game. It's Pictionary, Codenames, Kahoot, and there are a ton of other games that you can find online. Another idea is share time virtual sessions. It's a great way, another great way to get to know each team member, create themes for each event so it's organized and structured. You can create a talent theme where people share how to do something, stand on their head, juggle balls, or how to make a margarita, whatever that may be. Describe your dream vacation, show and tell, introduce your family, your dog, your cat, whatever that may be. Create virtual clubs, another great way to get employees from different teams or who don't usually interact to mix and mingle. Create theme clubs, and it brings people with the same likes together and same passions. So there's themes like book clubs. It can be a Stephen King book club or a John Grisham or a Tony Robbins, whatever that may be. You can create a cooking club, music club, art club, and so forth. And lastly, this is my true favorite. So I'm a very extroverted person and I love being around people. So with this pandemic, it kind of squashed that whole world for me. So one great thing to, especially for those employees who live alone and have no social contact within their residence, have them ask their teammates to get on a Zoom call or a Slack, turn on their cameras, turn off their mics, and have a multi-hour co-working session. And if you run out of ideas, ask your employees for ideas. They are a great source, and doing so will allow them to have an impact on your culture. So when done right, these activities will help mitigate those three struggles I mentioned earlier. It forces remote workers to unplug from work and participate in non-work activities that are fun, reminds remote workers struggling with loneliness that there are all these amazing people behind them. And it gives employees opportunities to communicate and collaborate socially, which builds trust among the team members, which then results in helping employees successfully navigate through individual and teamwork projects. So what's the secret to creating a successful remote workforce? It's commitment, it's passion from a strong leadership team, and it's you. You are responsible for ensuring your employees have the opportunity to connect socially to help develop and maintain a highly functioning team. So that concludes my presentation, and I would now love to introduce our next speaker, and that's Lori Bedneski. She is the owner of the San Diego Workforce Ergonomics company. She is a certified ergonomic specialist and a licensed physical therapist with over 25 years of experience working with patients in an orthopedic setting.
Patty, while we're getting Lori set up, let me ask you a question. You mentioned that that IT, that should be one of the first meetings, and Eric was talking about the importance of IT. So I do think it's really, really important. I want to be sensitive about the way I say this, but IT hasn't always been known as the warm and fuzzy part of the company. So it would seem like there needs to be a retraining of your IT team to kind of recognize that their role is going to be different now. And typically your first IT meeting is, here's the password, call me if you have any problems. And by the way, don't call me. So how do you address that part of it?
Well, you said it right. It's about, during this time, it's all about recalibrating. How do we create a quality experience for our employees, and who are our employees going to be touching? Which individuals in the company will be part of an employee's engagement? So you have to be proactive and train those individuals in advance and help them through this transition. And they then become the face of the new hire. They then become the cheerleaders of the organization to help everyone move forward through these crazy times.
I think that was good. And by the way, you really can't wait for other people in your company to do these things. So if your company is not doing these things and you have a team that you want to keep together, you need to do it on your own. So my advice to those people who are saying, geez, I wish my company did some of these things. If you're leading a team and you have people working for you, you're going to have to start doing this stuff on your own. If you don't, they are going to leave. Employees, want to work someplace where they feel part of a team. And if your overall organization isn't doing this and your success is dependent upon keeping your team together, you really need to start thinking about doing some of these things.
Definitely. Definitely. I totally agree. So.
Didn't mean to interrupt. Let's go on to Laura.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lori, and I am the owner of San Diego Workplace Ergonomics, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to set up your workspace at home. I know it's probably been difficult for a lot of people, and I've gotten a lot of calls for help with that. So first thing I want to tell you is ergonomics is actually fitting the workspace to the worker, not fitting the worker to the workspace. So I'm going to start by going over the neutral posture. So you can switch slides, Sarah. Thanks. So when you look at this person at the desk, it's an ideal posture. And how I usually start with my clients, for all of you that are out there, I want you to take your chair. If it's an adjustable chair, that's ideal. If it's not, you want to sit in your chair and see if you can get your feet flat on the floor. That's how you're going to start. I know some of you probably have an adjustable workstation, but most of you have a fixed desk that can't go up or down. So that's why you really want to start with your chair, and we can adjust that to fit the desk. So sit with your feet flat on the floor, and you want an ideal 90 degree angle between your hips and your knees. If your knees are a little bit lower than your hips, that's okay. When you look at this also, you want to use the back of the chair. A lot of people tend to perch forward, never sitting all the way back in their chair. When you do that, what happens is you're having to use your back muscles to keep you erect all day. Hence, that's why people end up with back pain, because they're either perching forward or they're using those muscles. And a lot of them, I know people think we have long muscles, but a lot of the muscles that hold us up are very small muscles, maybe the size of your finger, when they're intersegmental muscles. Anyway, you want to get all the way back in the chair and check to make sure you have about 1 to 2 fingers behind your knee and the seat pan of the chair. You don't want to be too, so that your thigh should not be, or half your thigh should not be off the edge of the chair. And also for somebody that's petite like me, I'm only 5'1". If I get a chair that is too long in the seat pan, my knees are hitting the back of the chair and my feet are dangling, and that's something that we really want to address. So if your feet are dangling, you want to start by bringing the floor to you by using a footstool. You don't have to go and buy an ergonomic one, although there are plenty on Amazon or ergonomic stores that you can find on the web. You can use a box, you can use, you can build one yourself, you can use books. And I have done with clients where I've taped catalogs together, so it will be the height of their feet being off the floor, so that because you really want your feet supported so that your back is supported, your feet are supported, and you're having to use less muscle, and you will have less muscle fatigue overall. The next thing you want to look at is look at the picture and look at the posture of his arms. His arms are close to his body, and they're at kind of a 90 degree angle at the elbow. And you can go between 90 and 100 degrees, okay? And his wrists are in a neutral position. When your arms are by your side, you're relaxed. Think about it as if your arm is forward on your mouse or your keyboard, if you're reaching forward, if you were to step away from your desk, keep your arm in that position, you're basically holding your arm up in mid-air, and that's using your rotator cuff muscles, giving you fatigue in your shoulder. And again, the rotator cuff muscles are very small. They are the size of your fingers. Some of them are very tiny. So over a 8-hour day holding your arm up like that, you're going to fatigue, you're going to end up slouching, you're going to end up with discomfort in your shoulder, which can go up to your neck, okay? Also, you want your ear in line with your shoulder. This is a great posture. Most of us, or people that I see, they're looking down at their screen, especially if you're using a laptop, which I will go over in a few minutes. So you want your head in a neutral position. You want to reduce the clutter on your desk, especially if you do not have a chair with casters and it's not movable, because every time you turn to reach something, you are going to have to twist your body, which is something we really don't want to have to do over time, okay? You want to think about the proper lighting. Don't use your screen as your lighting. You want it, if you can, ideally, and I'll present that in the next slide, but if you have a window in your room, that's ideal. And you want your screen perpendicular to the window, not the window behind you or not the window in front of you, because it's just going to compete with your screen and cause glare, and then people start squinting, that kind of thing. If you don't have a window in your room, I suggest using a desk lamp or some kind of task lighting that'll give you some light, not using your screen actually as your light, okay? And in this picture also, you can see there's a document holder. If you're reading documents or having to look at things on your desk, you want something. In this picture, you can see between the monitor and the keyboard, there's a black thing on an angle. That would be an ideal place for a document holder if you can fit that. And you can use a 3-ring binder. They have things that you can get on Amazon, or you can get them at an ergonomics store. That will suffice for that, so that your head is not having to be in a forward position looking at your documents. Okay, next slide. So also you can, oops, back one. Nope. Can we go back one? There, oh, back one. It's continued on that one. Thank you. Nope, go back one. Nope. Sorry. Go back. There's 2 of the same slide. Okay, right there. You want your mouse close to you. This is just a continuation of the last slide, because you don't want your mouse over to the side, and you don't want with your mouse, you want your hand floating on your keyboard and your mouse. A lot of people grab their mouse and they leave their wrist on the desk and they just move their wrist back and forth. With that, you're going to create what we call contact stress at your wrist, especially if you have a hard edge on your desk. And we have a lot of nerves. We have the carpal tunnel issue, where there's nerves and there's tendons in your wrist. And by keeping it stationary on the desk and just moving your mouse with your hand, it will create issues. So you don't want to keep your wrist stationary on the desk or the wrist rest. Now, I don't always recommend wrist rests for mice, but if you have a hard edge desk and you want to put one in front of your keyboard, then that's okay, because you don't want a hard edge desk, okay? The other thing is to set up your monitor appropriately. If you look at this guy, from his eyes to the top of the monitor screen, not the actual top of the monitor, you want it to be parallel to that. So it should be a straight line. Ideally, it's going to change depending on your vision, but you want the monitor about an arm's length away. So that's kind of a good objective. You want your screen tilted up. That helps with glare. It also is the way we use our visual field. And you want your monitor centered between the G and the H key on your keyboard. That's ideal, okay? Now, if you use 2 monitors, then you have to decide whether you have a primary monitor versus a secondary monitor. So you have to look at, do you use your one monitor 60 to 70% of the time, and the other one you only use 30% of the time. If that's the case, and you're using them, if you're using them equally, I'll put it this way, then they should be centered. The center of the two monitors, or both monitors should split right at your G and H key and kind of be tilted towards you on an angle, not straight, kind of angled so that you can have to use the least amount of neck motion going from one screen to the other, okay? Also, if you do realize that you have a monitor that you're using 60% of the time and the other one 40% of the time, you want that primary monitor in front of you between the G and the H key of your keyboard, and the other one should be on the dominant eye side. That everybody has a dominant eye side, and unfortunately I'm not going to be able to go through that today, but it should be, if you can't figure out your dominant eye, then just put it on one side angled towards you, and that will allow you to not have to turn your head so much all the time, because you don't want your head tilted to your secondary monitor constantly when that's the one that you don't use. You want to use a headset when you're on the phone, use ear pods, and I highly recommend when you're on the phone that you're standing. So I tell my clients, you want to ideally get up every 30 minutes. But if you're on the phone, that's a great break that you can use to get out of your chair. And I'll go over that in a minute. As far as looking at your monitor constantly, there's a 20-20-20 rule in ergonomics, and it's every 20 minutes, look away from your monitor 20 feet for 20 seconds. Ideally, we're not all going to do that. So what I suggest is when you get up every 30 minutes, that's when you're going to take your visual field away from your monitor. And when I say get up every 30 minutes, people say, well, how am I going to do that? There are apps on the phone, or you can set a timer on your computer. I have one on my phone to ding every 30 minutes. And then that reminds me to get up out of my chair. And it doesn't mean you have to take a 10-minute break or 15-minute break. I'm not advocating that. What I'm advocating is get out of your chair, maybe do a couple of stretches, or just walk away from your computer for 30 seconds or a minute, come back, and that will get you out of that seated position. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how do you adapt to this at home? So I have some before and after pictures of somebody sitting, and then I'm going to show you standing. So here she's at on her laptop at her kitchen table. You can look at her in the very left side, and you can see her feet are not flat on the floor. Her shoulders are elevated, her head is tilted forward, but this is something that we typically see at home. Or even the second picture, you can see she's not using the back of the chair because she's petite and the chair's a little bit big for her, and she's leaning forward, making her back have to work harder than it should. And you can see where her eyes are tilted. Her eye level is not in the same line as her screen. So using a laptop with the keyboard, with its own keyboard, I don't really suggest. If you're using a laptop at home, the main thing I would suggest is get an external keyboard and mouse, so that you, at least if you don't have anything else, that's going to get you in a better position than being hunched over onto your keyboard. So what I did here with her was, you can see from the feet up, I put actually it's a monitor stand, but I put that under her feet because it worked perfect, okay? And then with the laptop, that is a laptop stand that I purchased on Amazon for about $19, and it works great. Ideally, if you can see her eye level in the top of the screen, I probably would put another book or something, a block under that laptop stand to raise it a little higher. And she has an external keyboard and mouse, so she doesn't have to worry about bending over. On the very, and then you can see in the first picture in the after, I lifted her a little bit on some blankets and a pillow and put a pillow behind her back. And if you can notice her arm position, well, her head position's in a great position, but her arm position is now closer to 90-90, and her arms are close to her body. So it's a much more ergonomic, good, neutral posture. And the difference between the two after pictures, the only change is I put an actual ergonomic back support in there, and you can see that versus the pillow. But if you don't have something like that, I'm just showing you how you can become as in the best neutral posture you can be. Okay, next slide. Okay, and this is somebody standing at home. So here he's also on his laptop, and you can see he's having to bend over to look at the screen. This is even worse than the sitting posture, even though people say, well, I'm standing, at least I'm not sitting all day. But this posture is actually worse than the sitting posture that we previously saw, okay? His neck's in flexion, his shoulders are rounded, things that you don't want to be in that type of position for a prolonged period of time. We call it an awkward posture, and in essence, it's a static, it's not a repetitive motion per se, but it is because you're in that position for a long time. It's more of a static posture. So we started changing things to make it better. We got him an external keyboard and mouse. We lifted, we put his computer on a laptop stand, and then because he's taller, we had to lift the laptop stand and put that on a monitor riser, okay? And you can see from the arrows, it makes it better. It's not ideal in the first picture. And you can see what's happening though, when we have it at this position, his elbows are not at 90. And look what happens at his wrists. His wrists flare up, and then your wrists get into extension, what we call extension. And what that does is it creates some contact stress there, and it's going to put some stress on that carpal tunnel. So what I did was, in the last picture, I lifted the laptop screen and put that on a book. We took a box and we created something a little bit higher to put his keyboard on. And unfortunately, his mouse is still down by the side, but he told me that he uses his keyboard more than his mouse. So this is a little bit more ideal. And you can see the elbow posture is more at a 90-90. His eye level to his screen is better, not ideal, but it is way better than where he was. So when he's standing there, if I took a straight line from his ear to his foot, it's in a more neutral posture than he was when we started, okay? So next screen, next slide. And this is the last slide I have. One of the things that you want to consider, and if I could tell clients or all of you one thing, it's set that timer on your phone or on your computer to get up every 30 minutes. If that's impossible for you, at least get up every 45 minutes to an hour. Sitting or standing for prolonged periods of time is going to create some issues because your body is going to fatigue. We're not meant to do that. We weren't designed to sit in a chair all day. Back in the day, we were way back in the day, we were hunters and gatherers, and that's what people did for a living, not sit stationary in a chair all day. Again, use a headset or AirPods when you're on the phone, and this is a great time to take a break, get up, walk around, especially if you don't have to be right at your computer while you're on the phone, but if you do, at least stand up, okay? Another thing, use a separate keyboard, mouse, and monitor if possible. You can use a docking station, that always helps if you want to get a separate monitor. If you don't, just at least, and there's things you can use at home. You don't have to purchase a lot of equipment, but just to see if you are in that neutral posture. Again, avoid clutter, especially if you have a fixed chair and a fixed desk, so you're not having to bend and twist and do all those things to reach some of the things on your desk. A surge protector I always recommend, so that you don't, it's not an ergonomic tool, but it's always a good thing to have so that you're not having to reach over, plug things in, do that. Biggest thing I see, and talked about this with some people earlier, avoid sitting on your couch or on your bed. There is no way you can get in that correct ergonomic neutral posture by doing that. I'm finding this a lot with kids that are going to school remotely. It's just easy for them to lie in bed. They don't have to get out, especially college kids lying on their bed, and they're laying down with their head cocked up in a 90-degree angle from their from their chest, and it's just a horrible position to be in. You want to use natural light if possible, and place your screen perpendicular to the window if you can. And the last thing I want to tell you is don't do the same thing on your free time that you do at work for 8 hours. If when you're done, you're going on your computer or your phone or playing video games, you're still sitting. And so you want to try and avoid that, especially if you're having any musculoskeletal dysfunction or any kind of discomfort, then that's just going to add to it. So those are the things I have to, share with you. And if you guys have any questions, I have a phone number. You can feel free to call me, and be happy to help you.
Lori, one of the things I like is that you don't say here's the things you have to buy, and this one's $800 and this one's $600 and this one's only $200. So get these things. I like the fact that you're using things you have around the house. But one of the things I think would be, if you are going to buy, be looking at your chair. And so if we're going to go out and we're going to buy a chair for home, what do we look for? And maybe more importantly, what do we kind of stay away from? And do we need to spend $200-300 on a chair?
Well, ideally, actually, good ergonomic chairs, you're going to spend upwards of $300 to $400 and higher. So things that you want to look for in a chair, if I was going to suggest somebody get the perfect chair, at least one thing you want to do is look for the 5 casters on the bottom of the chair, so it's movable. It should, and a good ergonomic chair is going to have what we call 5 paddles on it. So it's going to go up and down. The seat pan will slide forward and back. It will have an adjustable back that will slide up and down, as well as tilt forward and back. And then the whole chair will tilt. Now, if you're going to buy just something off Amazon, which my son did, so I helped him search for that because he didn't have the money, and he needed a higher chair, so we got one. I just looked for something that was the range of the chair is going to be important, how high it goes depending on your height. So up and down, and I would say casters, and maybe look at the length of the seat pan, because for like me who is short, I don't want a seat pan that's 9 inches long and my legs are going to hang off of it. So those are some things that you want to look at when you're looking for a chair.
Can we get all of the panelists to come up if they're on?
Yeah, but
So is there anything that as we did our presentations that you know, a lot of these things obviously seem to be commingled a little bit, right? So a lot of what Eric was talking about had to do with Patty's and also with Lori. So how do we when you're, you know, if you're working in an office environment that maybe is not promoting some of these things, give us some strategies as to how we could at least do our little part. Patty, why don't we start with you? There's no audio from Patty.
Like a Zoom connection.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yep.
All right, well, it's really important to get the leadership team on the same page. So having those conversations with those individuals that do make the decisions and that can help move things forward is the first step that I would suggest. And expressing, I mean, bringing data, sharing information that's coming from the employees directly. I think that's really the biggest part of what I've learned through the 8 months that we've been going through this is when you're actually listening to those individuals that are feeling the pain points of this pandemic, that information in itself will help the company make those right decisions to ensure productivity, ensure morale is up, ensure that we address issues sooner than later.
You know, one of the things that I've heard from senior executives is they're very proud that, in fact, they say their productivity has gone up, right? And I really caution some of those executives. That means that a lot of your employees are working a lot harder than they normally work, and they're gonna get burnt out. And when they get burnt out, guess what? They're going to leave.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to be, you know, someone gave me an example the other day is their team leader demanded they get on an 8:30 call to check in, a check-in call at 8:30. And, you know, my question to them was, well, do you have a checkout call at 5 o'clock? No, of course not. And so just thinking about the optics about, you know, how you manage your team and that they are working harder, you know, they're working longer, and you do need to put some limits to that. I mean, I think you need to change your expectations where, you know, the office martyr used to be very proud of the fact that they're working at 6 or 7 o'clock. But if that's someone from the senior team sending out emails, maybe that's not the right thing to do during this time.
That is correct. I think it's, again, going back to listening to our employees. I've during that market research I conducted, I gathered those type of information where employees were feeling like they felt like they had to work till 9 o'clock at night because now there's an expectation that everyone's at home, everyone's hunkered down, and there's more time to work. And really, again, paying attention to what your employees are saying versus the outcome of the, you know, the output of work. Go back to listening to spending time with your employees because eventually what's being produced will eventually decrease because then it's affecting morale, it's affecting even how, I mean, the mental health, physical health of those employees. So again, I really would stress paying attention to what your employees are saying, solicit feedback from them during these crazy times. So.
One of the questions I would have for Eric is, Eric, you talked a lot about security. And again, I think IT teams aren't the warmest and fuzziest, and it's oftentimes is a black and white issue for them. You are not, if you you are not allowed to use other messaging services besides Slack, right? And we've seen that way of thinking fail in a lot of companies. And so, you know, what I would advise as, you know, as you're going your IT teams, to try to have more of a conversation that's not going to have dire consequences if you answer wrong about how you're communicating to the outside world, and that's going to help them manage those security risks rather than pounding your fist on the table saying you will only communicate versus this way. What do you think about that approach versus, you know, what IT normally would do?
What I found that has typically worked most successfully has been changing the mentality of the team from being we're here for break fix, we're here for just responding to needs and requirements and failures that we must fix, and then being looked at as I'm just a go-to guy or go-to gal. The fact is that it becomes a collaborative, communal type effort and peer-based effort. I mean, when I talk about customer service driven approach of IT. That does mean taking your team and getting them to learn empathy about, especially as we've seen in the last 8 months or 6 months, the change in mentality that folks have had to, fellow coworkers have had to learn to adapt to their new way of working and the new way of approaching needs. IT teams, to properly support them, have to adjust with that as well. And that means building out the empathy. So it's not, because it's not just going in and saying, well, just answer this way. It's instead going in and saying the cliche, which is very true, we're all in this together. Let's make it so that we are all able to work together, even though we're not able to be right over your shoulder to help you by walking down the hallway or getting on a quick call while I'm over here and you're over there, and then I got to jump to my next call. It becomes more of a personal type approach, which I think is what will provide the IT team not only better satisfaction and better growth of themselves personally, and professionally, but also provide the better experience for the employee to get an answer that then allows them not to be as intimidated by this fact that, hey, security is required by all of us, but we must keep that in mind as a positive need. This is all of us working towards the common goal of success in the company.
Good answer. Lori, one of the things I would, so ergonomics has always been seen as this kind of a touchy-feely type of thing that's nice to have, but I think and workplaces have implemented them over decades, right? So these things, a lot of, you have a good chair, you have the right height desk at work, but working from remotely, none of those things are taking place. And I'm not so sure, maybe you're seeing something different. I'm not so sure ergonomics has been elevated to where it should be for remote workers. Would you agree or disagree with that? And if you agree with that, again, how do we talk to our management teams about the importance of ergonomics in terms of productivity and health and wellness?
And I agree with that. I don't think I've talked to people where their companies have given them a stipend of a few $100s up to $800 to buy equipment for home. So in that case, I think they're really looking after their employees to be comfortable. And to me, when you are in a comfortable position, and I think that since, like Patty said, people are working longer hours, they don't stop at 5 o'clock, and they don't click out. So now they are sitting in a more uncomfortable position. They're not driving to and from home. They're not getting up and talking to their coworker. So they are in a static position more so, where I think that is something that like I said, some companies are doing it, other companies not so much, but that was prior to COVID. I've seen companies that are very forthcoming with their employees to get equipment and have an ergonomic program in place, and others that they wait till there's an injury. And unfortunately, that can come whether you're home or you're at work. And the last thing you want is a work compensation injury, because one carpal tunnel injury can cost, when you do the insurance things through OSHA, it can cost $50,000, $60,000. And when you go through the whole thing about time off and that kind of thing, it can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So to me, making people comfortable, even if it's buying a chair or whatever, is way cheaper than having a workman's compensation claim. So.
Yeah, I will reference that, a lot of the senior executive teams are very proud of the fact that their teams are more productive and they're working harder and longer. But employees aren't stupid. They know that, right? And so there's got to be, on the other side of that, there's got to be a reward system and a structure that promotes wellness in the workplace. And Patty addressed some of it on just bringing more fun and more social to the workplace. And if you don't do that, your employees they're going to continue to be more productive and they're going to work harder, but they're going to do it for someone else. I think we're already seeing some employee retention turnover. We're coming towards the end. Is there any kind of last points that you guys want to make before we get to the end?
I think I'm good.
I think I'm good too. Thanks,
All right,
Kevin.
let me then real quick, let me go through how people get a hold of you. Patty, why don't we start with you? How do people get a hold of you?
If you need any further advice through any, your process through this transition, feel free to reach me at HR, E as in Eric, X as in X-ray, T as in Tom, US as in Sam at gmail.com. Thank you.
Fantastic. Lori, how about you?
And you can reach me through my website at San Diego Workplace Ergonomics. It's www.sdergonomics.com.
Eric, how about you?
My email address is the best way to reach me, and it's Mr. Simon Says, MrSimonSez as in Sam Edward Zebra at nrjiz.com, energize.com.
Fantastic. And for everything Tech San Diego, go to techsd.org. And you could always look at our events. Look, I think this content has been really good. It was a spattering of everything, which I really love. We combine these different things, but all these things are important, and we could probably do a webinar on each of these subjects, but we wanted to bring them all. So I wanted to give a nice virtual handshake to our speakers for doing everything, and we will see you on the next call. Let me bring on our organizer in case I missed anything. Sarah Spiva, our events and program manager. Sarah, is there anything that we missed?
No, tomorrow, in case anybody is interested, we have a manufacturing and operations roundtable that is still open for registrants to join us. The event starts at 10 a.m. and it's focusing on supply chain challenges.
For those of you who are listening on YouTube, it's probably already passed because right now it's October 7th, and that event that Sarah's referencing is on October 8th. So we will go ahead and end this webinar. Again, go to techsd.org. Have a nice, productive workspace. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.
Sarah, I will let you end it.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Hang on.